Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Kim Sykes on another segment of My Mind Mondays. And on today's segment of My Mind Mondays, what I just want to talk about, I'm not pretty sure if everyone has watched the Miami Dolphins versus the Cincinnati Bengals football game where Tua Tagovailoa actually sustained what I believe and what many believe is a second concussion. So what I'm gonna do today is first I'm gonna give y'all a brief rundown of my history of having the concussions. Then I'm gonna go over some things I've seen from the media, such as YouTube, ESPN, and etc., etc. Then the last thing what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go ahead and get my final thoughts on basically like how I felt about the whole situation. So like I said, first I'm gonna get my thoughts on my history of having a concussion. So my freshman year playing JV football, I actually at practice I received a hit and I got hit, and at the time period I got up, but I got up too fast and like everybody thought I was wobbly. I didn't think I was actually in that bad of condition, but I was diagnosed with a concussion at the time period. But really, I didn't have no side effects and anything like that. But that was actually my first diagnosis with a concussion. So my sophomore year, this is why I actually feel like I actually had a concussion. When I was going to the ground running football, teammate comes up at practice, hits me behind my head. All right, so I sat out like just at practice or whatever. But I went back to practice the next day and the next day and the next day and so on. And I continued practicing and stuff like that. But to me, that was actually like my first real concussion, because I'm just saying this because my head was actually ringing for like 3 or 4 days after that. And like I was still having headaches, but I didn't tell anybody. And this just kind of go hand in hand when we talk about the Tagovailoa situation. But yeah, so like I said, I had a headache for a few days actually, and I didn't tell nobody. So that was when I actually felt like I sustained a concussion, and like I said, I didn't tell anyone. And so my junior year, I'm just trying to make the football team. I'm trying to do everything I possibly could. So I actually take on one of the biggest players on the football team. Goes by the name Ricky Walker. He actually plays on the CFL. He went D1, went to Virginia Tech and everything. And so I took on him a few times, and so head on and so. When I initially was getting hit by him, I had a headache, but I didn't even sit out practice that day. I mean, at that moment, I still kept on going. And it wasn't because it was a tour day, and it wasn't the effects during practice. Like I said, I had a headache, but it wasn't the effects during practice other than the headache that affected me. But when I got home, and then when I got back to practice, my behavior started to change. Like, I started to be more out of space. And like, if you know anything about me, and I'm talking about days later and stuff like that, if you know anything about me, I don't like to sit in the dark. I actually like to sit in the light. And I like the lights being around me and stuff like that. But at that time period, during this concussion time period, I was just sitting in the dark because my mind was wandering. And sometimes I was trying to figure out who I was, and I was actually in a mental fog for about 2 weeks. And I'm just telling you all these things just to sum up what I feel about the Tagovailoa situation, and just carrying on my thoughts as being a coach and just my experience with having a concussion. Just to let y'all know that concussions are a real thing, and they can affect someone not only football career, but their own livelihood. And now fast forward into like when I'm talking about some of the things I've seen on the media. One of my favorite YouTube channels is this MD. His name is Brian Sutner. If you go on his YouTube channel, he gives good insight on injuries and how certain mechanisms of like how your body is being shifted and stuff like that, and how that could potentially injure your body. And I get a lot out of it because me as a coach, and now like me training and stuff like that, I know how to handle my injuries and stuff like that, or I know how to basically take care of my body better. But one of the things he was saying that he found out was there's a loophole in in NFL protocols, and that's basically saying that the neurologists, they basically, it's based upon their judgment to really figure out if someone motor, because like when they say their motor, is like how their body mechanics and how they're functioning is pretty much is affected, or like if that's deemed concussionable and that's deemed related to their concussion. So that's one of the boxes that they don't check off. It's because of based upon their judgment instead of basically a set amount of rules and regulations upon that. So that's one way how they was able to get out of that Tua Tagovailoa situation. And just like when you look on the media, also like they said they fired the neurologist or the person who was basically deemed accountable for allowing Tua to get back into the game. And then just also like if you see it on media, there's been numerous situations where I've seen Stephen A. Smith even said that, hey, the players need to be held accountable. But I tell you like this, at the end of the day, sometimes as a player, you just want to win the game, and like you can't really hold them so much accountable because they're out there. But I would say this though, the coaches should be held accountable. They need to be able to look at that situation and look at film. I know someone out there is pinging them down like, hey, he doesn't look right. And even though the medical professionals should be held accountable, everyone should be held accountable. And I would just say this, just picking off of what I had said earlier about my history of concussions, just knowing how Tua has a history of being injury prone, and I've had that same history, you want to get out there as soon as possible because you want to prove yourself that you're not injury prone. Like, I mean, heck, when I had sprained my AC joint in my left shoulder, which until like a few years later on in my life, I was still having problems. And sometimes I still wake up and my shoulder could just be crunching. And I'm pretty sure like Tua felt the same way. Like, man, I got to get on this field because I don't like this label of being labeled as injury prone. But that's just a few things. But like now I'm about to go into basically the whole overall Tua situation and my thoughts. Now, when you look at the film, excuse my French, y'all, but that shit scared the hell out of me. Just because, like, one, I'm a coach, and two, I've been someone that, like I said, that had those concussions, who's been in the ground days. Your head is hurting. And I know this is a brief pause, but this is how much pain that shit gave me. And if you can't watch that video and not cringe to see his hands tense up like this, I don't know what the hell else you could do, man, because that shit is scary, man. I'm sorry I'm cussing on my podcast. I don't know a lot of cussing, but this is one moment where I got to express my thoughts, y'all, as someone that experienced concussions. That's scary. And I hope coaches watch that. I hope parents watch that and say there needs to be concussion protocols on all levels, not just on the NFL level, on college level, because we see that on TV. Because there's a lot of concussions that people don't see and we don't even talk about it. There's kids from lower levels who don't get no recognition out there, but they drive their head in the fucking ground. They drive their head in the ground and they're on the field 2 plays later. Or if they miss today's practice or they miss today's game, they out back on the field the next day. There needs to be a universal concussion protocol. There does not need to be just, the NFL. No, there needs to be one all levels around, because just like the Tua situation, now they say the post-concussion syndrome, or, if you receive a concussion within a few minutes or a few hours of itself, you're more likely. But if your brain's not fully healed within a few days, you're more likely to have a second concussion. And that second concussion could be life-threatening. And in this situation with Tua Tagovailoa, it was definitely life-threatening, because you don't see people body tense up like that from a head injury. I never seen that on an NFL game. I never seen that in person. I never experienced that myself. And I'm sorry that I'm being so emotional about it, but coming from someone who's had concussions, who didn't know who they was when after they had that concussion, took them a few weeks just to get their thoughts together. had to go to doctors just to get cleared. I speak from experience. I'm not speaking from someone who just watches the game. I'm speaking for someone who had a concussion. And that's what I want to get out of this video, is that I'm speaking from experience, but I'm also speaking for someone that's speaking for safety, and I value player safety. I done made multiple videos on situations like the Demarius Thomas situation where head injuries are life-threatening. I love the game of football, but there needs to be a universal protocol on how we treat these things. And it starts even from the rec ball level. I feel like USA football need to take more acknowledgement. I feel like PIFCO, USYFL, all the other leagues need to take more acknowledgement. It was like, hey, if this kid got a concussion, we need to document this. And I'm just talking about as a coach. I'm talking about somebody as from experience, and I'm also hoping speaking for someone who has a kid out there in the football field. And with all that being said, y'all, this is Kim the Slice doing another segment of My Mondays.